Welcome to the Alchemist Nation podcast. We are a community of business and real estate professionals who are on a shared mission to help every individual achieve financial freedom through right action, the right knowledge, and the right accountability. Join me, Andrew McMurray, and my co-host, Mitch Jaworski, as we find and interview those who have mastered wealth and who have a desire to share their wisdom with you. Enjoy.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Alchemist Nation podcast. My name is Mitch Jaworski. I am your host. I am here with my co-host, Andrew McMurray, today, and we have another fun guest, per the usual, because that's how we do it. Andrew, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing fantastic, Mitch. Thank you for asking. Pardon me in advance if I'll try to mute as much as possible if I keep coughing, but I'm getting over a fever. Other than that, doing amazing. We're here. Another day to breathe.
Making it happen.
Of course, as always. So today, we are joined by the epitome of resilience and adventure, Jeffrey Holst. So Jeffrey's a former attorney and now a real estate expert, and he hasn't had a bad day, which this is crazy to me, hasn't had a bad day in over a quarter of a century. His life is a canvas of extremes, from conquering life-threatening illnesses to scaling Africa's highest peak and managing a vast real estate portfolio, over 350 apartment units, and I believe just under 200,000 square feet of industrial, office, and retail spaces. He's the author of the Amazon best-selling book, No Bad Days: How to Make Every Day Great, and an inspiring figure who's been featured on hundreds of shows. Jeff's story is a testament to the power of positivity and perseverance. Branded the most interesting man in the world, Jeff is here to share his insights on living a life full of adventure and success. With all that being said, Jeff, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, thanks. I need to steal your intro for my own intro, apparently, because that's pretty good, man.
Right?
It makes me sound way cooler than I am, but I appreciate it.
Well, Jeff, the bar's high now. So if I don't feel like you're the most interesting man in the world by the end of this podcast, I'm going to feel let down. So the bar's high.
What if I was like the second most interesting? Because that Dos Equis guy seems to have a trademark for that. So I don't know if I can actually be the most interesting man.
You might be
right.
I'm
getting there. That guy's old. He'll probably die off. Then I can take his spot.
Right? You're like, I'm going to wait him out. The crown will be mine soon. That's awesome. There's something that, I didn't know about you is that I had not known you used to be a lawyer. So I'm going to kind of hijack our direction here. And I'm curious to know what kind of law you practiced, how long, and why you kind of were like, all right, enough of this. It's time for real estate, if that was the transition.
Yeah, I mean, so I went to law school right out of college. I got a master's in business and I went right to law school. So I did 10 years of college, way more than anyone needs, really. And it was mostly a function of not knowing what I wanted to do. I mean, I always knew I wanted to invest in real estate, but I had this idea I had to make money to invest in real estate. So I thought if I went to law school, I'd become a lawyer, I'd make money, and then I could invest in real estate. Turns out that's actually a dumb strategy. You just end up with a lot of student loan debt and, a lot of it that you don't use. Technically still a lawyer. I'm licensed in Michigan. That's it. I gave up all my other licenses now, but I haven't practiced law since 2010. So I did bankruptcy law in 2007, 8, 9, and 10. So as you can imagine, we did pretty well for a little bit there. But I was diagnosed with leukemia and it kind of screwed up my practice. I was running a 2-lawyer law firm at the time. We even had a television commercial. It was like the Better Call Saul of West Michigan. And,
yes.
I was on the back cover. Yeah, I was on the back cover of the phone book, everything, like the whole thing, right? Like we're spending almost $10,000 a month just in marketing. And then, we had a lot of other overhead and stuff. And when I was in Peru, my other attorney quit. And then when I came back from Peru, I got diagnosed with leukemia and I couldn't work for months. So we went from 2 attorneys to 0 overnight and piled up an enormous amount of debt. And I ended up in personal bankruptcy myself in 2010. Wow. And so at that point, I was like, geez, I don't know if I want to practice law anymore. I didn't even want to do it in the first place. And now I'm like, I've been a bankruptcy attorney who went bankrupt. Like it didn't feel like a solid selling point for the future. Although, honestly, I think I could have been a great bank. I mean, I was good before, but I think I could have been great after because having gone through it, I could really sympathize with the clients, right?
I was just thinking that. I'm like,
But I didn't love it, and I also, because of my leukemia, I thought, I don't know how long I'm going to live, and I didn't want to spend the rest of my life doing something I didn't love. So I took a job in Tennessee. I moved to Tennessee in January or December of 2010, and that's actually when I started investing in real estate. About a month after I moved to Tennessee, I bought my very first condo. This is what you do, right? When you have $100,000 in student loans that don't get discharged in bankruptcy and your credit's completely screwed up, and you have only had a job for a month, you go buy real estate.
love
That's
it.
what I did.
I mean, but that's how you got started. I mean, and it's funny too, because I think that statement right there kind of is the anyone can do it, and stop using your excuses, because we work obviously with a lot of new real estate investors, and I'm mentoring a bunch of them currently, and I see a lot of the mental roadblocks, and it's like, oh, I don't have the money, or oh, I don't have this. It's just like, find the deal and the rest will come
Yeah,
together. It's like Field of
yeah,
Dreams. It's like, if you find it, they will come. It's just like, if you find the good deal and you have no money, then find someone to JV with that has money, or whatever it
yeah,
is.
and I mean, in my case, I excuse me. In my case, I actually got a small bonus to take a job, so I was fortunate. I had about $20,000 saved up between the bonus and the little bit of money that they let you keep in bankruptcy, and so I ended up buying this condo for $30,000 as a bank-owned foreclosure, and it was in Michigan, in north of Detroit, in a really nice suburb. And the foreclosure was like $100,000 mortgage on it or something when they foreclosed, and they sold it to us for $30,000. So we paid $15,000 each. I bought it with a partner. Took most of the money I had on hand, but we had a free and clear condo, and we rented out for like $650 a month already at that point. Like, so it's like more than a 2% deal.
Yeah.
Which, if those deals were out there now, I'd buy all of them,
Oh, of
every
course.
single one. But people were panicking in 2010, and I was like, well, I don't know. I have nothing to lose. I can't go bankrupt again. I have no money. Like, I might as well go for it and just see what happens. And so we bought a lot of property between 2010 and 2014. We did a lot of JV deals. We did a lot of private money deals. And my partner Travis and I ended up buying. I think we probably bought about $1.5 million for the real estate during that time. Which to me doesn't sound like a lot now because prices have gone up. But back then we were buying houses for like, $10,000 in Detroit or $20,000. So it was a lot of real estate, and then we've since sold most of that and bought apartments. But
That's awesome. I love the fact that basically this all started with you JV'd with a buddy on a condo. Like, that's how this all started. You bought a condo that you JV'd on. Like, so
yeah, we still own it. It's probably worth 150,000 now, and we don't own it. We've never we had a small mortgage on it actually. So after we bought two in the same building, and then it was completely out of money, and then we took a private money mortgage on it, like 25,000 on each one, and used that 50,000 to buy a duplex, and that was the third deal we did, and I still own that. We own all three of them. So the first three pieces of real estate I bought, we still own, but they were in really good areas. That's why we bought them. It was like Birmingham, Michigan, and like Rochester, Michigan. So for people who know the area, they're like, wow, those are great places. So
that's awesome. And it just shows, like, the ability to leverage, regardless of what scale, right? Whether you're talking about $50,000 properties or $500,000 properties, at the end of the day, it still functions generally the same. And, you're able to leverage those first two condos into money to buy, your first multifamily, so to speak. So,
yeah. And I mean, and we didn't stop. I mean, we didn't buy a lot of multifamily until 2016 or so, but we ended up with, like, in 2016 when I started converting over to bigger deals. I'm bigger at that time, was 10, 15 unit deals. When we started doing those, we had about 60 free and clear houses in Detroit. That's what was supporting us. Like, we just quit my job and I said I should be able to live okay. I own half of these houses in Detroit and they're all free and clear. Like, but we never had any distributions for 10 years. We never did a single distribution from that company. We just reinvested every dollar the whole time.
I like it. I mean, that's a good, and it's funny too, because, usually people look at that for the first few years, at least. It's always reinvest. I mean, full on decade. But I got to also think, so were you taking cash flow though, or no?
No, we took nothing.
You literally took nothing.
We literally
Every
invested
went back in.
$0. We reinvested everything. We still barely taken any money out. I mean, I took out But the flip side is the total amount of money I ever invested in that property was $17,500 in that one.
So awesome.
Yeah, and now that portfolio has see it has three apartment complexes, say 100 units of apartments just in that portfolio without ever putting any more money in. Because
So
we always
awesome.
reinvested and we took a lot of private money loans and stuff like that.
Yep.
We ended up doing some JV stuff, and we flipped some stuff, and we just took the proceeds from flipping it and put it right back in. We were buying like houses for 5,000, put 5 or 10 in them, sell them for 40, then buy another 2 houses, and then after we do that 3 or 4 times, we buy a better house for ourselves and keep it.
I love it.
Yeah, we're pretty well. The thing is, it'd be harder to do that now because stuff has come up in value. Obviously, I mean, I had a timing thing too, right? Like I happened to get leukemia at the bottom of the real estate market, so like everyone else who has started investing anytime since 2010, I've ridden a wave of good fortune that may or may not continue forever. I mean, who knows, right? I mean, we've definitely seen some softening in the market lately, but I've done the work to put myself in a position to be defensive. Like I'm in a good spot right now. So
Yeah, and I mean, and being cognizant of market cycles always helps, and you never know, like you said, when they're going to change, how long it's going to last. But at the end of the day, I call it the snowball effect, right? And that's why I always tell people, I'm just like, just get your first deal because you can't start the snowball until you have your first deal, and you start seeing the impacts of, not only like the efficiency of scale, but also just the fact that you can use existing properties to leverage into more properties, right? Whether in
yeah,
and you guys didn't even sell stuff. I mean, think about like, a lot of times you could sell like 1031 exchanges are awesome. It's like
yeah,
I've sold
yeah.
single families and rolled them, into 4 or 5 unit buildings.
Yeah, we've been doing that too. I mean, the second multifamily we ever bought was a 32 unit building, um, in Michigan, and we sold 10 houses to buy it. That was the down payment.
That's awesome. So now I'm curious, for those that haven't, leveled up to that size, that have just done single family, small multifamily, when you went and bought that 32 unit, right? When you bought that first, larger, mid-sized small apartment building, what was that experience like in terms of, was there any trepidation? Was there things that you didn't know that you learned, or was it pretty much the same as buying a 5 unit?
Yeah, so we did our very first non-recourse loan on that, like a small balance Fannie loan, and we didn't know what we were doing. We spent a lot of money on costs that we wouldn't have, maybe it probably wasn't worth it, honestly. And we had a yield maintenance, which at the time our rate was about 5.25, and then rates went way down, so our prepayment penalty became really stupid high. So we ended up trapping a ton of equity because we ended up, we did the whole value add thing, fix it up, raise the rents,
Yep.
all that. So we paid about, it was $1.5 million for it or something like that. It's probably worth 3.5 now, something like that. And we haven't ever been able to refinance it because of the yield maintenance. So we've had it since 2017. And of course, the nice part about that is the balance is really low and there's a ton of trapped equity and it cash flows really well now because of all that. But I think it would have been better to structure it a little bit differently,
Yeah.
and maybe do the value add first and then go for the non-recourse loan, which is what we would do now in that scenario. Um, I've always been hesitant about bridge loans, and I think I was right about that because those have burned some people lately. But you still can do like local banks with like 2 or 3 year balloon payments, with reasonable rates, so that you're not going to get pinched real bad in the event that there's a thing. So that's what I would that's what I try to do now. We buy things even longer is better. If you get 5 or 7 year terms, then I prefer that. But
Yeah, it makes sense. And that's what I love about it. It's like, nearly every property you get involved with, you learn something. And especially, when you have a first go around, whether it's a larger, property or someone's first property. So, but I love that your, regret is basically, all right, my ROI is sick. I'm annoyed that my ROE is not that great because
yeah,
all this
that's
equity is
exactly
tied
right.
up.
It's like I could do so much more with that cash. Although now I'm kind of happy it's sitting there because the market's a little choppy and stuff, and it's like emergency emergency backup plan. Like if things get too bad, we just go grab that money because we can refinance it now. because rates have gone up, which the way yield maintenance works, they're an inverse relationship to rates. So now that rates are up, the prepayment penalty is pretty low on it. So yeah, but we're just kind of sitting on it right now and not worrying about it because like the rate's also really good comparatively, right? Because it's like just under 5.
Yeah.
Of course, for a while we were really irritated about that because we wanted to refinance it, pull $1 million out, and get a 3.25 loan or whatever. We never were able to do it, but yeah, we did it on a fair number of other properties, so it worked out okay.
That's cool. Yeah, I think about that too. And I look at my portfolio. I'm like, what's my average rates here? I'm like, oh man, I don't feel like I did very well here. But
Yeah,
historically, we're still all in great shape because it's just like, you know, anything below 8% is technically a great rate historically. So, but we've just been so
yeah.
spoiled.
I mean, I remember when I bought my very first house, I refinanced it after about a year, and I got a 5.99 rate. This is on a primary residence, right? Like favorable FHA financing, all that. And I told my wife at the time, I said, we're never going to see rates this low again. This is our only rate we'll ever have below 6%. Clearly, I didn't know what I was talking about. But it did
I would
seem
have
that way, right? Like it just didn't seem like it was ever going to happen.
totally would have agreed. I mean, I remember, because obviously, the 10-year treasury, has a big impact on on mortgage rates. And, coming from my financial background, I used to talk to some of my financial advisor buddies, and we talk about the 10-year, and I'm just like, they were like, I've stopped saying it has to go up because you know what? Nothing has to happen. Like this thing could go to zero apparently. And I mean, it pretty much almost did. Now obviously we've got a rebound, but yeah, it was wild. I don't think any of us ever expected to see rates that low. And, for those that were able to lock in, long-term loans with super low interest rates, like good for you. Like, but
Yeah. I've got 2 condos or 2 duplexes that I have that are locked in at 1.99%.
oh,
1.99%. Like it's stupid. It's like and there's a ton of equity in them, and I'm just kind of like like, like I want to sell them or refinance them, but then I'm just like sick. Like the payment's like $600 a month on a duplex, and it's like $1,200 aside in rent. So it's really hard to do anything with it.
you can't, I mean, you literally can't lose. I mean, inflation is more than your interest rate. Like I'm talking like
Yeah.
normal long-term
Like
baseline
normal,
inflation.
like long-term inflation is, yeah, it's crazy.
You're just watching the equity build and you're like, well, that's awesome. I'd like to access this, but then I'll lose my nice little advantage here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's a point where it becomes pointless and you just do it, right? But like,
Yeah.
those are like, $275,000 assets, and they're like, we owe like 150 on them. Right. So there's a bunch of equity, but it gets below 100. I think I just have to refinance them because it's just stupid.
Yeah. That's cool. I mean, and it's funny how life works because, obviously if things don't play out the way they play out, and if you don't get sick, who knows if you end up starting in real estate in 2010. And it turns out 2010 was literally the best year to start in real estate.
Oh, I think it probably was. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my first deal was actually 2011, so I missed it a little bit, but we'll let it go.
Yeah, it worked. So I got started. My first one was 2014. So I mean, things had already bounced, but we were still
You
still in
did.
the
You
early
still did
parts of
pretty
that
well,
curve.
actually. I think. I had a friend who got out of real estate in 2014. He was like, "These prices are crazy. They're never going to be sustainable." And he's sitting on cash for like 10 years now, right? Like just waiting for the crash. And I'm like, dude, they're never going to those prices again. Like it's not happening.
No. I mean, listen, I feel bad for him and I feel better about myself because I'm not gonna lie. In like 2019, I started selling stuff
Yeah.
especially here in South Florida. I'm like, this is insane. I was like, I'm like, we're topping off, and I sold some stuff, and then obviously, COVID happened, so that threw a monkey wrench because you can't predict that the government's gonna print a
Yeah,
third of
I
all
mean
money
that's
ever
really why.
created.
I mean, I think prices were going to top off in 2020 if it hadn't been for COVID. Like, and then
Yeah.
we were really being cautious at that time. Like, I started to see like trends towards interest rates going up. Inflation wasn't terrible, but it was starting to creep up a little bit. And then COVID happened and just reset everything. Just threw everything around. I mean, everything was completely different because you had like this 30% contraction in the economy in one quarter. I mean, that's like unprecedented. And then they tried to offset that by throwing money at it, right? And
Yep.
to be honest, they did a pretty good job. Like I thought they were crazy at the time, but like the pain we're feeling of inflation now is probably significantly less bad than the pain we would have felt if we hadn't thrown money at the problem.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I didn't forget to think about the other side of it. It's like, yeah, like inflation, big surprise. Obviously, it was going to happen when you throw that much money into the economy. But at the same time, probably more fun dealing with this than dealing with,
Mass
recession.
starvation,
Yeah.
death
Depressions,
and
recessions,
destruction.
you
Yeah,
know.
like because that's where we could have ended up, especially worldwide. Like I think in a lot of ways, the U.S. saved the world in that regard because like we transferred a tremendous amount of our wealth to the rest of the world. Um, and it is what it is. Like, I mean, it's good though. Like people didn't have to starve to death in Africa. I'm pro people not starving to death. Now I know some people still do. I mean, I'm not saying we solved hunger, but
Yeah.
like, I'm okay with paying the price of in a little inflation. And honestly, like it was so obvious it was coming. The inflation's actually really good for me. Like I was out on podcast 2 years ago ranting and raving about how my goal was to borrow $10 million because they were giving money away below the rate of inflation. Because interest rates had gone up from 3 to 4% at that point, and inflation was 6. I'm like, you should borrow as much money as you can. It doesn't even matter if you have anything to buy with it. Go buy toilet paper. It'll be more expensive than your interest costs next year. Like buy $100,000 worth of toilet paper and just use it. You'd still come out ahead, right? Like,
Valid.
you know, and and I mean, I kept telling people that, and I mean, we did that. We borrowed $10 million in 2022 because of that,
Wow. So
and
you
I don't
legit
regret
took
it.
advantage of it.
Yeah, and I mean, so now I'm just riding this inflation. I'm seeing inflation come down, and I'm like, dang, that sucks.
Well, the good news is if I need toilet paper, I know who to call.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I bought real estate because I thought it was a more
Probably the
solid investment. Yeah,
better play, especially since real estate generally goes up with inflation. So
yeah.
wins.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see some downward pressure at some point again, and rents are nationwide now are flat. They're not increasing. We saw double
Yeah.
digit rent increases for years going up to COVID, and then coming out of COVID, it got even more. You're seeing high single digits and low double digit rent increases in most markets, and frankly, the pricing wasn't keeping up with it. The price of property was not going up as fast as rents were, and that was unsustainable. And all that happened with this inflation, it was actually already here. Like the way that the Fed calculates the way that the government calculates inflation, like the CPI, they miscalculate rent all the time. If you add in rental inflation, particularly new leases signed, you'll see that inflation is actually lower now than it was 2 years ago. Like it really is. Like we're really actually in a pretty good spot inflation wise. And I think if the Fed isn't careful, they'll push us into recession by keeping rates up too long. But I'm hopeful that they'll just start lowering rates first quarter, and we'll see rates come down, and that'll be good. So that's what I'm hoping for. We'll see though. I'm in position to where no matter what they do, I'm okay though. I'm not super cash heavy, but I'm not like light on cash. So like right now, if I'm preparing, if someone's listening and they have a couple of properties, and they have one that's not performing very well, maybe get rid of it and put some cash on the sideline. If you're thinking about buying something and you're not sure, maybe hold off a little bit. I mean, I know that's counterintuitive, but if it's a good deal, you should do it. Obviously, I mean, if it cash flows now, it's going to cash flow later when rates come down.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you're going to refinance it, you're going to get a lower rate. So
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the takeaway is like now's not the time to be over leveraged.
yeah, no, for sure not, because we could see a 10 or 15% reduction in values, and if you're at like 80% loan to value, 85% loan to value, then you lose all your equity.
Yep. Yep. I know it's funny too. I mean, just out of my nature, I'm more conservative, and it's like every time I look at my portfolio, I'm just like, on average have like it seems like 30 to 35%, and then I'm always
Yeah,
like, oh, should I access some of this? But it's like, no, I sleep well at night. I'm still making
yeah,
good.
and I think that's another part of it, right? Like I think you need to reevaluate your return on equity periodically, because otherwise
Yes.
you end up in a situation where you have 80% equity and 20% loan to value, stuff like stupid stuff like that. It's not good. Like it's not a good return at that point. Less leverage is really beneficial as long as you can reinvest at a rate higher than you're borrowing, right? That's the thing you always have to be thinking about.
Yep.
And adjust it for a risk premium, because that's the other thing people forget, right? They're like, oh, I can borrow this money at 7% and I can invest and get 8%. Well, okay, maybe, but you have a risk premium in that 8%. And at this point, the risk-free rate is maybe like 4%, something like that. So 4% of that 8% is risk, right? And when you borrow money against an asset you already have, all you're doing is shifting, cash into a risk position, and you're not getting compensated very well for it if you're only getting 1% and
No.
accepting 4% extra risk.
Heck.
So you have to always be thinking about it that way, but people don't, people aren't always thinking clearly when they make those decisions.
Yeah.
They get
No,
too
you're right.
aggressive. It's easy to get over aggressive in real estate.
It is. It
It's
is.
also easy to get way too conservative, though. It's really hard to run that middle line. Like, I know people that have 30 houses paid off, and they've had them 30 houses paid off forever. And I'm just like, so you've got a $2 million, $3 million real estate portfolio, whatever, and you're just sitting on it, and like that's it. Like, you should have like a $10 million real estate portfolio. Think of it. I mean, honestly, like if they did it and they had a 30% loan to, 30% equity in it, their equity would have went up so much the last 5 years because all
Yep.
the values went up. They'd had, 4 times, 5 times as much return.
Yeah. Like you said, it's finding that middle ground. And it's interesting too, because it's really like personality types, right? Me, I have to force myself to be more aggressive, like, because I'm just naturally conservative, play it safe. And then, obviously I have investor friends that are, way too aggressive. And I'm just like, yo, buddy, like pull it in a little bit. Like
Yeah.
you're running like max volume, where if like one thing goes wrong, like you're going to get jammed up. So, I think that's big. When you're talking about this, I always tell people, I'm like, you got to figure out your personality type and which way you lean, and then work from there. Like either step on the pedal, force yourself to step on the pedal more, or force yourself to take some, off the gas.
Well, and you did say, the key, you said I sleep well at night earlier,
Yeah.
when you were talking about your own position. And I mean, honestly, there's some value in that too, right? Like it isn't always about maximizing your return. Like if I wanted to maximize my return, I might go trade options, but there's a lot of risk in options, right? And I have to feel really comfortable with that. And there's nothing wrong with it. And actually, I think about risk like this. So I kind of alluded to it before, but like, all of your return is like a risk-free rate of return, whatever that is, like say the Fed discount rate, right? Plus like a risk premium. And I think the secret to any kind of investing, it doesn't matter if it's options or real estate or anything, is figuring out a way to mitigate your personal risk and get paid that market risk premium. So like an example would be, I don't buy duplexes very much, right? But I told you I had a couple of duplexes. Well, the last 2 I bought, it was because I had stupid good opportunities with a local bank, right? I got 1.99% interest. So if I'm going to get 1.99% interest, I'm taking way less risk for my leverage than what the market is compensating me for effectively. So that's an asymmetric return on my risk. And I think if you can find those kinds of scenarios where you have asymmetric return, and you can get that by just having better knowledge. There's a street in Chattanooga that I've owned about 10 duplexes on, right? Like if one comes up on that street, I probably know as much about that street as anybody else, right? Which means I'm taking less market risk, even though the market risk is still being compensated the same way. I'm actually effectively taking less risk because of my personal knowledge. So I'm always looking for ways to get really good at one thing, to niche down on it, right? So
Yes.
mid-sized multifamily, value add mid-sized multifamily. And then I can really get good at that, and I can systematize that process. And especially if I do it in a smallish area, so I have contractors and bank relationships and all that stuff, then I'm getting paid the market risk, but I'm actually taking less than market risk to get paid that. And that gives me an asymmetric return, and I do very well. And I think if you do that, you just put in the work, you can do that in any market, and in any market cycle, it doesn't matter.
100%. I'm so glad you just shared that, because, I believe in that. I preach in that. I found like, my niches, and I always tell people, I'm just like, know your local market. And that's wherever you invest. People are like, oh, this, I'm just like, I don't care if you're investing out of state, in your town or down, or an hour down the road. Like, know your local market, because it's going to vary state to state, market to market, town to town. And, when you have that knowledge, like you said, you're reducing your risk by having that knowledge. So yeah.
And you're still getting paid for the risk that's out there. So like that's the thing that's best about it. And I mean, and I think this is true in almost everything in life. But I mean, people ask me that too when you talk about your markets. Like they ask me, where should I invest? I'm like, it doesn't matter. People make money in every market. People are like, oh, I can't invest in California because the prices are too high. Well, no, that's not true. You can make money in California because otherwise the prices wouldn't be that high. Like somebody's making money there. That's why the prices are high. And because it's just all market conditions, right? So like it's just different. It's a different market than where I invest. I like to invest in Chattanooga. I like to invest in Detroit. Chattanooga's emerging tertiary market. It has good, solid, predictable rent. So I like it. But why do I like Chattanooga? Because I lived there for 12 years, right? Like I know the market. Why do I invest in Michigan? Because I'm from Michigan. It's just not that complicated. Like I never really spent a lot of time worrying about like, oh, what market should I invest in? Because I just like figured out how to make money in the markets I was already in.
Yep.
That's what I'm doing in Puerto Rico right now. Like I haven't bought anything here. Like I moved to Puerto Rico 2 years ago now, and I look at real estate periodically. I go to real estate meetups. I meet other people that are doing real estate, and people say, "Why haven't you bought any real estate in Puerto Rico?" And I'm like, still learning, putting in the time. I didn't buy any real estate in Chattanooga until I'd been there 9 years.
Wow.
I bought only in Michigan, even though I lived in Chattanooga, right? Like, because I was like, I got to learn. I mean, and then when I quit working and I decided I was going to buy in Chattanooga, you know what I did? I went and got a job as an Uber. I'm driving around in a Mercedes S500 premium fuel, getting like 18 miles to a gallon driving Uber because I wanted to know where the apartment complexes were. Like, and I knew that people that ride an Uber are going to be taking me drop offs and pickups at apartment complexes. And I'd pick someone up at an apartment complex, and I'd be like, "So, tell me about your apartment complex. How much is your rent? What are you doing there?"
Dude, that's legendary. See, and I love it.
Put in the work, mitigate your
Exactly
risk.
right. Do the things to have success, right? How many other people can say they were Uber driving so they could learn the neighborhood and learn the apartments? I love that. That's literally like a sound clip for the whole entire podcast.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, and I don't know if I'm not doing that here. I thought about it, but then I was like, my Spanish isn't good enough. So like, I'd probably get confused or whatever. But like, I mean, it's just if you put in the work, you can make money in any market. That's the method, right? Like that's the thing. You just got to learn about the market, about the asset type, and all that stuff. And then just people that are listening to this podcast are already a step ahead, right? Because they're listening to a podcast. Like I know tons of people that never buy real estate, and whenever I talk to them about real estate, they're like, "Oh, I wish I could buy real estate," but they've never listened to a podcast. They never read a real estate book. I've listened to hundreds of podcasts. I've been on hundreds of podcasts. I make my own podcasts, right? Like I read books about real estate. I talk to other real estate investors. I go to meetups. That's all I do. It's my whole thing.
Yeah. You get the knowledge, you get the network. Andrew, you've been quiet. I feel like you got a lot to say.
Bro, I'm learning. Honestly, in this conversation, I'm getting punched based on the strategies I've taken or not taken. So for like real quick context, I did buy my first property. I've only purchased one property so far back at the end of 2019. And I wish that started the momentum I wanted it to. But then a year later, my wife at the time and I think got a little bit of excitement at all the equity that developed in the property. And so we sold it. Rather than taking that money and buying more property, we sold it, got an RV, drove around the country for a while, had a good time, but didn't follow the plan of buying more real estate. And so now, 3 years later, we've gotten divorced, having to readdress the whole, like, what am I doing? What's my strategy for myself? And I go back and look at that property, and I'm like, shit, I could be sitting on like $300,000 in equity right now just from that one. But that's okay. I'm back in Mitch's class, getting back into buying real estate. And what I'm learning from this conversation, the main reason that I've been telling myself I haven't bought anything is because I'm like, I don't understand the strategy. I don't understand what market makes sense to buy in this time. You hear all this fear from everybody. So it's like, I'm just not going to look. But I understand Massachusetts and Fall River very well. I had lived there my whole life until moving here a couple of years ago. So what I'm pulling from this conversation is, yes, this might be a difficult time to find a good deal, but that's an opportunity to really learn how to hunt for good deals. And also, if there's one market I know better than anywhere else, it's back up in Mass. So I may as well just start putting myself out.
And I mean, listen, I bought my first rental property in Michigan after I moved to Chattanooga. Like it worked for me. That doesn't mean if you don't put the work in, it won't work for you. But like it will work for you. But I wouldn't get too down on yourself about not having real estate. Like one of the reasons we want real estate is so that we can have cool experiences. You sold your property, you went and bought an RV, drove around the country. You like lived a dream that most people have. Like I'd like to do that. I've never had a chance to do that. And so I would say, real estate was really good to you. And yeah, sure, it might be worth more now, but you got a divorce. Like you might have ended up fighting over it. It might have made your divorce worse. There's so many like what ifs there that none of it really matters. You are where you are now, and you can only take responsibility for where you are. And like, Hal Elrod, the Miracle Morning guy, he has this quote. He says, "The moment you take full responsibility for everything in your life is the moment you can change anything in your life." And way I look at that is like when I got leukemia, it wasn't my fault I had leukemia, but I had to do the things necessary to change my life, to respond to it. I had to play the cards that I was dealt, right? So, and I had to take the consequences of the decisions I already made. And the thing is, when you make a decision, you're necessarily cutting off other possibilities. That's always the case, right? The decision, the root of it actually comes from Greek, and it's decisive, right? And decisive is the same word they use for it's like an incision, right? It literally like cuts. So it cuts off other possibilities. And so you made a choice based on the information you had at the time. You made the best choice you could based on that information, and you can't go back and change it. So it's now irrelevant. All that's relevant is that you learned some stuff from that decision that you made, and you have learned it. And you know a little bit more about real estate than you did then. And now you're doing the things like studying and being in the group and being on the podcast and doing all this stuff that you need to accumulate that knowledge. So all you got to do is just start doing it. And like, I think Mitch said earlier that he tells people all the time, like, you just got to buy a deal. Like you have to go find a deal. I always say the only way to make money in real estate is to buy real estate. Like you can't make money if you don't buy real estate. Like, yeah, I mean, yes, I know you can do wholesaling or something, but I consider that a job. I don't consider that investing. Like, there's nothing wrong with wholesaling. There's nothing wrong with flipping, but if you want to invest, if you want to make money through investing in real estate, you got to buy something and you got to hold it. Like that's the way you make money in real estate. And, you really only make money 4 ways in buy and hold real estate. It's cash flow. That's important. So, make sure you have cash flow in your deal. Next one is like amortization, like the debt pay down over time. So, make sure you have some quality long-term debt so that you're not in a stuck position if rates do continue to go up for some reason or something crazy happens. You don't want your debt called. You don't want to have to be refinancing in the middle of a recession, which could happen. So at this point, long-term debt. The third way you make money in real estate is appreciation, right? You don't have any control over that. It just happens. I mean, you've got the forced appreciation stuff too, I guess, on top of that. And then the last way is the tax advantages. And so to me, like you need to maximize your return in all 4 of those categories. And if you focus on those things and you go find a deal that cash flows right now, I think cash flow is the most important and the least important of the ways you make money in real estate. Because I don't think you ever cash flow yourself to wealth. Like it's net worth that matters. It's equity that matters. Cash flow is a measure of safety. The more cash flow you have, the safer the deal. So if you're not sure about a deal and you don't love it and it doesn't have a lot of cash flow, walk away. But if it has good cash flow and you're not sure about it, it's probably okay. Because like it's cash flow safety.
That's a good way to put that. I like that. I like that a lot, actually.
I stole it from someone else, I'm sure. I don't.
That's what we do, right? We learn, we repurpose.
Yeah.
We learn, we repurpose.
Yeah, I mean, like, and the thing is, I hang out with really cool people and really cool people doing really cool real estate stuff, and they tell you things, and some of it sticks with you. And I mean, I think it might have been David Green actually said that to me one time, that cash flow was safety. Like the more cash flow, the safer the deal. And at first I was like, I'm not sure. Like I like cash flow, but the thing is, like, it really is. I mean, if you think about it, like if you have a free and clear real estate, it's a safer deal, right? Because you can't possibly get leveraged out of it, right? But it's going to have more cash flow because of that too. So really the cash flow is the evidence that it's safe. The reason it's safe is because the cash flow easily pays for it, the other cost of it.
Yeah.
Because it has more cash flow. So it's really about cash flow. And, Robert Kiyosaki said that once in a podcast I was listening to. He goes, how many deals can you buy that cost you $100 a month? Like, maybe you can buy 2 or 3, support them on your other income and stuff like that. But how many deals can you buy that make you $100 a month? Like an infinite amount, right? Like as long as you can figure out a way to buy it, if it makes you $100 a month, you can just keep stacking them up. So, the cash flow is really important. And so, the more cash flow, the better. Figure out a number that makes you safe. And that's really what we're talking about with the return on equity thing earlier, too. You said you slept better at night because you have more equity in your stuff. But the reason you sleep better at night is because you have more cash flow. You're less likely to lose your asset.
Yeah.
So it's really still just the cash flow that's determined. That's why I say it's like the most important. But on the flip side, it never gets you wealthy. Like, even if you get to this magical place that everyone wants to get to where they have X dollars of cash flow and it covers all their expenses, that's the Kiyosaki wealth ratio stuff. It's cool, but it doesn't make you rich. What made you rich is that the only way you got there is you built up a lot of equity. We haven't even, we're like coming up on 45 minutes here, guys, and we haven't even talked about this no bad days thing. So if you don't mind, I want to transition to no bad days because it's real important.
I'm glad you brought it up, because as soon as I was waiting for an opportunity to transition. So
yeah, I just
I had so many good taglines I was going to use, and then you were crushing it though. I'm like, I can't interrupt him. He's got to. It's like,
listen, we can do it again. Like, we'll just do like no, 6 podcasts. We'll just do a whole series of that.
Right.
It'll be fun.
Episode 2, round 3.
If we get to no bad days at the end of the series, that's fantastic.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and listen, I'll tell you the super short version of this real quick, because like you mentioned it had been more than a quarter of a century. It's actually almost 30 years now. Like, it's crazy. Like, I gave up bad days when I was 17 years old. Okay, 17. I'm 45 now, so it's 28 years without a bad day. And I've had bad shit happen to me. Excuse my language. If you have to bleep that, I apologize. But,
no, you're good.
Like, I've had a lot of really crappy things happen. I got leukemia. I went through this divorce I wasn't expecting. I got melanoma. Like, I went bankrupt. Look, these are not fun things. So it's not like bad stuff doesn't happen to me. It's just I refuse to let it ruin my day. And this is how it works in my mind. And it works really well for me. And I have had several, I think hundreds of people now that have adopted this and have successfully applied this strategy. So I know it works, right? And one of my goals, I've never even said this on a podcast before. I'm going to say it on your podcast right now. Nice. One of my new goals that I'm going to roll out for next year, I call the Billion Good Days Project or something like that. I haven't even named it yet. But the idea is I want to, in the course of my lifetime, create 1 billion additional good days. Like, so if you guys have more good days, you're going to, like, it makes it, I don't know how to track this metric, so I'm just going to guesstimate it. But like, if you, Mitch, give up bad days, and let's say maybe right now 1/3 of your days are bad days and you go to 0, that means, and you live like, I don't know, say 20,000 more days, that's 7,000 more good days I created, right? So like, I'm just going to try to aggregate all that and create 1 billion good days. I don't care if I actually hit 1 billion. It'd be better if it was 10 billion, right? Like it's not even that much when you think about it. There's 8 billion, 9 billion people on the planet. If everyone just had one more good day, it would work, right? Like, we're good. 1 out of 10 people have a good day. We're gonna get 1 billion extra good days, right? So this is how it works. Good and bad stuff happens to everyone every single day, right? I think we can acknowledge that. You're gonna see some good stuff. You're gonna see some bad stuff. And the second part is, somewhere in the world right now, someone's having the best day of their life. Could be you guys, could be me, could be someone else, doesn't matter. Somewhere else in the world, someone's having the worst day of their life. So the day is objectively neither good nor bad. It's just how that individual perceives it, right? That's what matters. So the first thing you do is you recognize that the day is neither good nor bad. It's just how you think about it that determines whether it's good or bad. It's how you experience the day that determines whether it's a good day or not. So if you wake up today and you say today's a good day, and you go to bed tonight and you say today was a good day, it was a good day, right? Now, there are all kinds of factors, that variables, like to control your brain is not easy, right? Like if good stuff happens to you, it gets really easy to have a good day. But then, like, your kid gets sick, or you get your arm ripped off by a dinosaur, it doesn't really matter. Something terrible happens to you, right? Like, this bad stuff happens. You could be like, wow, that's really bad. Now I've had a bad day. Or you could be like, that's a really great story. I didn't even know dinosaurs still existed. And now that Dos Equis guy can just go, suck an egg or whatever, because I'm clearly the most interesting man in the world. I just had my arm ripped off by a dinosaur, right? Like, you just got to reframe this stuff, right? So like, when I got melanoma, this is a good example of this. I was like, my first thought was, oh, this is bad. 2 cancers. Because, beating one cancer is one thing, but when you start having a second cancer, it usually feels like you're pretty much toast. Like, that's been my experience, is most people that have multiple cancers don't make it through. So my first thought was, whoa, that's bad. My very next thought, like almost instantly, was, this is going to make a great story on a podcast someday when I tell them about how I had melanoma. And like, now I'm on a podcast talking about it. So I think I might have been right about that. Right. But the thing is, like, it comes back to that radical responsibility I was talking about earlier with Hal Elrod, right? Like, when I got diagnosed with melanoma, I could have curled up in the corner and cried, right? Or I could say, you know what? like everyone has challenges. This is a challenge I have to deal with. I'm gonna make the best of the situation I'm in. Even when I had leukemia, and I thought I was gonna, I mean, I really thought I was gonna die. I did not think I'd even make it till Christmas. I got diagnosed in September of 2008, and I really did not think I'd make it till Christmas. My white blood cell count was 258,000. It's supposed to be like 4,000. The only thing I knew about leukemia at the time was I had this young cousin who had died of leukemia a couple of years earlier, and her white blood cell count when she died was like 150,000. So I was like, I'm toast, right? like I'm walking dead at this point. And I mean, I felt like it too. It was really not great. And so for 3 or 4 days, we were under the distinct impression that I had weeks to live if I was lucky.
Wow.
You know, and I was sitting there and I was thinking to myself, you know what? I've had a really good life. And like I have these few weeks, I'm gonna have to live the best possible version of these next few weeks. I'm gonna get as many of the people I love together and tell them what's important and give them the advice that I can give them and impart whatever unique knowledge that I have that I can impact their life. And that's another thing I think, by the way, all the time, like as a quick tangent, like I think we owe it to the world to live the best version of our lives. Because, you know, there's only one Andrew McMurray, right? Like you're the only one. And if you don't do those things that you were put here to do, then you're cheating the world out of all that greatness you could do. And so I feel this like really strong desire to help people recognize that they can do much more than that they think they can do. You know, one of my mentors told me that the richest place in the world is a graveyard because so many people are buried in the graveyard with all these ideas in their head that they never brought to fruition. And ideas are where wealth comes from. You know, we create our own existence. Like it goes beyond just like choosing to have good days. It goes to like showing up as the kind of person that does the kind of things you want. You want to buy the next deal, Andrew? This is what you do. You do the things that the guy who has that next deal would do, and then you'll end up with that deal, right? Like maybe that means you have to get in an Uber, but if you already know the area, you might not have to drive Uber. Like that's cool. But like you have to show up and be the kind of person that accomplishes the kind of things that you accomplish. And I don't think there's any limit to what most of us can do. You know, I mean, obviously, if you're like disabled or something, you might have a limit. But I've known people that have severe disabilities that have done amazing things, right? And you know, and I think it's just about like Henry Ford had this too. He said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right.
Yeah.
And at first I thought that was kind of hokey, but I actually think it's true. Like if I believe I can do something, I think I can do it. Doesn't matter what it is. And I believe I can give up bad days, and so I have. And it works really well for me. I wrote about it in my book too, by the way.
I was gonna say, what's the blueprint? So I figure the best start for someone to venture into No Bad Days is to read the book.
Yeah, so the book's right here, actually. I got one copy right here, No Bad Days, How to Make Every Day Great. So, you know, the thing about the book is it's actually my life story told as a series of life lessons, what I took out of it. But I don't think you need to read the book to give up bad days. I think you just got to make the choice. See, what I did to give up, it's really, really simple, is I literally looked in the mirror and said, this is stupid. Why am I having a bad day? I'm 17. I'm healthy. I live in America. Like my life isn't that bad. I'm just going to choose to have a good day today. And I said, today's a good day, 10 days out loud, positive affirmation. It didn't work. So I did it more. And I just kept doing it until I believed it. And once I believed it, I didn't have bad days anymore. I remember distinctly the first time I realized I didn't have bad days. I walked into a 7-Eleven. The guy behind the counter said to me, how you doing today? And I go, I never have good day or bad days. And then I went, oh, I actually cussed really bad. I dropped an F-bomb. I was like, oh, F. Like, I never have bad days. I can't believe this is the greatest thing ever. Probably the guy thought I was insane, but I realized I hadn't had a bad day in a couple of months. And, you know, I haven't had one since. And then, so I know it works. It just took a little while. Like, it's like building up, you know, that muscle memory. Yeah. You know, there's science behind this. There's this guy, I read his book. It was called Hardwiring Happiness. I think his name was Dr. Hansen. So he writes about how you can do this exactly. And it's like when you walk outside and the sun hits your face, stop a minute and like embrace that moment of positivity. Because what happens is your neural pathways, the more you fire them, the easier it is to fire them. So we all know that person that like everything bad happens. Like nothing's ever good, no matter what happens to him. Like I had a friend, I swear, if he won the lottery and stubbed his toe on the way to cash the check, he'd think it was a bad day, right? I'm just doing the opposite of that. I'm just looking for positive. I'm like, oh, I have leukemia. That sucks. But I got to see my babysitter that day. That was pretty cool. You know, like I know that sounds weird. I mean, you missed the context of that story, but like that literally happened to me. Like I'm in the hospital and I was like, man, this is going to be a hard day. Like I got to find some positive here. And there was a shift change and the nurse came in and she looked at me and she goes, "Oh my God, Jeff, I can't believe you're here. I'm so sorry to see you." And I was like, "Oh my God, Shelly, I'm so happy you're here." And I hadn't seen her in like 10 years. She was like a childhood babysitter of mine. And I was just really happy to see her. And that made my day good. And that sounds goofy. Like that, if you're weighing leukemia versus seeing a childhood babysitter, like it seems like leukemia is more significant, but it wasn't for me in that moment. And it allowed me to have a good day. And you know what? That was probably the best day of my life because that's the day that got me to quit practicing law, to start investing in real estate, all that stuff. Right. So retrospectively, that day that most people would objectively say was terrible felt good at the time. So it was good for me. Ended up being actually one of the best days of my life.
That's so awesome. Yeah, because I think we get so focused in, that moment. You never know what the impact of the takeaway is going to be. And like you said, that was a pivotal moment for you because that led you to stop doing the bankruptcy law and eventually get into real estate. And if that moment doesn't happen, who knows if you ever invest in real estate?
Yeah, I mean, I probably would have because I was a weirdo and I wanted to invest in real estate since I was 10. But I mean, I kept waiting for the right time.
Yeah.
And that made me say, I don't know when the right time is going to be. Like, I just got to do it now. Like, there's never a right time to do this stuff. It's like you do it whenever you do it. And, I mean, what you just said there about it being a pivotal moment, it reminds me of something I was thinking about just last night. I'm writing a new book, actually. So you guys are first people to hear that publicly. So I was working on this thought and I was writing about pivotal moments because I actually have a chapter in my book, No Bad Days, titled Pivotal Moments. Right. And so I was writing about that and I was expanding on it. And I was thinking about the Steve Jobs quote. So Steve Jobs gives a commencement speech to Stanford in 2005. And he says something to the effect of you can't connect the dots going forward. You can only connect the dots going backward, looking back at them. And you have to just have faith that something, whether it's your gut, your intuition, or like God, I don't know what words he used, but it was like you have to just have faith that something will help you connect those dots, that there's something working in your favor. And then he gave a whole bunch of examples from his own life about how, things that happened, like he joined a calligraphy class. And because of that, we have really cool fonts on computers now. That wouldn't have happened if he hadn't been interested in calligraphy. He didn't know why he dropped out of college and went to a calligraphy class, but he did. And then we got cool fonts on computers, stuff like that. But like, that's really what this is. It's like, you have to live in the moment. You have to experience the moment, enjoy the moment, and recognize that we only get now. Like, we don't have a past or a present or a future. It's only the present, right? Like, right. The past is just a series of past presents that we're remembering. And the future is just a series of not yet presents, right? So like whatever's going on right now, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Always all that matters. And the choices we make right now impact the new present, the next present, the next present. So we have to just accept that we get to control a huge part of our own destiny. And then that's why I love that Hal Elrod quote that I quoted at the beginning. So
yeah, I mean, obviously Miracle Mornings impacted millions of lives. I mean, I know so many people that do it. I always joke and say I'm going to write a book that's called Miracle Midnight, since I seem to do my best work late.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, no, I mean, I don't know if it would have the same effect as starting at midnight, but I mean, listen, look, Hal Elrod is a living example of bad things happening, but still finding the positive.
Yeah.
And he continues to do that. And I swear, every time something negative happens to me, he finds something worse to happen to him to make it, like, I'm like, I have leukemia. He's like, I have leukemia. And I got in a car accident and almost died. And then I'm like, I got melanoma. And he's like, I just got lymphoma. It's like he's competing to be more tragic than me.
It's not a competition. Stop it. That's awesome.
I don't really think that's what's going on, but yeah, I mean, Hal's a great guy. Like the few times I've talked to him, he's been really fantastic. So
cool. This has been awesome. I mean, we'll have to have you on again. We can go on forever. Obviously, people can jump on Amazon, I'm sure, and find No Bad Days. And what else? If people want to get more Jeffrey Holst in their life, where can they go?
I mean, listen, I'm really easy to find. If you Google me, you'll find me. My website's jeffreyholst.com. My Instagram is at Jeffrey Holst. My Twitter's at Jeffrey. Well, X is at Jeffrey Holst, I guess now. But like, I'm Jeffrey Holst everywhere. I'm even on Be Real. You can find me there at Jeffrey Holst. No one's even heard of that. I'm on it anyway. But yeah, I mean, and the book's available everywhere, actually. Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Actually, you can request it at your bookstore. If they don't sell it, you should tell them to sell it, because
I love it.
that'd be really useful. I mean, I think I'm in like 4 bookstores now. I'm like, it's pretty
That's
exciting. Like,
cool.
yeah, like 3 Barnes and Nobles in Michigan, like near my hometown. They've been stocking it since it came out. So that's always fun. Like I go in there and I like take a picture of my book on the shelf and stuff.
No,
Be
that's
better.
totally cool.
Yeah.
I'd love to see my book in my local Barnes and Noble. That's just a feel good moment.
Yeah, it really was. It was really cool. Yeah.
Nice,
But
man.
anyway, yeah. So I'm easy to find. Jeffrey Holst. Instagram's probably best though. That's where I spend most of my time. And then of course, we have the old fashioned real estate show where we drink old fashions and talk about real estate on YouTube. That's always fun.
Yeah, that doesn't suck.
It's a pretty good show. And we've had some pretty good guests on there. Normally it's just the 2 of us, but once in a while we'll have a guest, and it's been really fun. I think our last guest was Brandon Turner, so that was a good time.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man. Like I said, I appreciate you coming on, and guys, like I said, if you want more Jeff, he gave you all the ways, and you can follow along and see how he has no bad days, and use it as a blueprint. So thanks again, Jeff, for joining us. This has been awesome, and yeah, we'll definitely do it again.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for the new ritual. Only great days, man. Today's a great day. Absolutely.
I love
Boom.
it. I love it. I mean, honestly, it really is that simple. It's stupid how simple it is. That you just gotta like accept it. Like you have to believe it. And the thing
Love
is,
it.
let's say it doesn't work for you tomorrow, right? Like, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? Tomorrow you don't have a great day, whatever. Just keep working on it and eventually you'll get there.
You
Yeah.
create the chain. It's like atomic habits, right? If the chain breaks one day, get back on it. Don't let
Yeah,
it be 2
exactly.
days in a row. All right, man. We're definitely gonna do this again.